doing our Tefillah workshop. It has been a while and we've missed it. So here we are. It's going to be a little bit different than what we thought we were going to be doing because, as it turns out, I have signed up to participate in a 6-week long program through the Contemporary Musar Institute. And we're going to be bringing that to our congregation next week. And it's going to be once a week with my teacher, Rabbi Ira Stone, and my Chavruta partner, Rabbi Rachel Bovitz, and some other wonderful, wonderful colleagues that I have spent years studying with. And so we invite you, that's going to be on Wednesdays, beginning next week for 6 weeks. And we're going to be looking at the prayer Unatana Tokef in preparation for the high holidays for the month of Elul. So join us. Hopefully you all saw information about that in our e-newsletter, and there will be streaming information coming up. So Cantor, Jackie, and I decided we were going to do one session right now, and then we're going to be bringing you all sorts of other ways to connect to the holidays during the month of Elul, little videos and things like that, and perhaps some other classes that the Cantor and I and our rabbinic intern David Helfand are going to be bringing you. So there will be other opportunities to continue learning in preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which will be happening this year. And we've got all sorts of wonderful and exciting plans in store for bringing our communities together in all sorts of interesting ways. So pay attention, stay tuned for that wonderful information that's going to be coming. As we have in the past with our Tefillah workshops, we're going to begin with singing Ivdu et Hashem B'Simcha, that it is incumbent upon us to worship God with joy and splendor. And given that the high holidays is one of those times that in the Jewish calendar says are moments of great joy. In fact, the Talmud says that 2 days, Tu B'Av, which is coming up, the 15th of Av, and Yom Kippur are the most joyous days in the Jewish calendar. So we should approach our experience of Elul not just with trepidation, but with also experiences of simcha and joy. So we sing Ivdu et Hashem.
עבדו את השם בשמחה, עבדו את השם בשמחה, בואו לפניו ברננה, לפניו ברננה. עבדו את השם בשמחה, עבדו את השם בשמחה, בואו לפניו ברננה, לפניו ברננה. יאללה 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 עבדו את השם בשמחה, עבדו את השם בשמחה, בואו לפניו ברננה, לפניו ברננה. עבדו את השם בשמחה, עבדו את השם בשמחה, בואו לפניו ברננה, לפניו ברננה.
So with that, hopefully we will join in worship together. Our class today is going to look like our other classes. We're going to look at one tefillah in preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The tefillah that we're going to be looking at today is Psalm 27, the psalm that we begin reciting each day of the month of Elul, that we continue to recite all the way through the end of the holidays, and actually all the way through to Hoshana Rabbah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen right now with all of you. Actually, wait, before I share my screen, just want to make sure that, okay, we're good. Close this, and share this. Okay, could everybody see it?
Yes.
All right, so what I want to do is I want to ask all of you to take a quick look at the psalm, read it on your own for 2 minutes, and answer this following question. Why do you think the rabbis chose this psalm in preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Are you good with the Hebrew here, or do you want me to scroll down to the English? How about if I scroll down to the English? Just for the one or two of you who may need a little bit of. And so here's my questions. What does this psalm have to do with getting our souls ready for the high holidays? Why is this read every day for the month of Elul? What verse or phrase speaks to you? So take a quick minute. I'll stop talking, read the psalm, and tell me what you think. After reading the psalm in English, I realized I should have given you a different translation. You know, there's a couple of beautiful ones by Rabbi Art Green, by Sheila Peltz Weinberg. This one's a little bit stilted. It came right off of Safaria. Jackie, would you do me a favor maybe?
Yeah.
After you're done singing Chacha Alti, will you go on to Safari and see if you could find um, the translation by Sheila or by Art Green or wherever, and maybe we can share that at the end for people.
Of course, I also have Miriam Glazer. I have Richard Levy. I have that right now pulled up. Do you want
Oh,
any of
perfect. So
those?
that's all we need to do.
Okay.
So, okay. So, I mean, we'll share it at the end, but so what does this psalm say to you? Why do you think it is recited on during the month of Elul all the way through the holidays? Okay, don't all shout out at once. Steady yourselves. Is there anything that you see that might be, right, talking about preparation, thinking about the high holidays? We have a ringer in Rabbi Diane Cohen, so
I'll be happy to keep my mouth shut if you want everybody to answer instead.
no, go ahead. If you want to say something, jump in.
Well,
And let's wait. Before you do, Bob, were you about to say something?
Well, I was just commenting to Miriam that the fourth verse, one thing I ask of the Lord, only that do I seek. To me, that really is the essence of preparation for the high holidays. You're saying, and help me.
it's on top. No.
Nice. Okay, Rabbi Cohen, what were you going to say?
Well, that and further on, let me find it. Yes. Do not hide from me. Do not thrust me aside. You have ever been my help. Do not forsake me. Do not abandon me. We are coming to a point of the year where we're really, well, at least traditionally, we're really frightened about how will our names be entered by the time this season is over. And I mean, there's lots of stories about people who were weeping literally in the sanctuary, hoping that their names would be remembered for good. And as we're moving up to that time, we're saying to God, don't forsake me, don't abandon me. I can't think of a more direct plea every single day, twice a day for 40 days to God, not to enter our names in the book of, God forbid, death. And there was one about my enemies, and I can't read. Raise. shelter me, brilliant. So, um,
I made it bigger because Sandy needed to see it a little bit better. Unfortunately, now it's on 2 pages, but you know what?
oh, it's up at the top. It's up at the top. When evil men assail me, it is they, my foes, and my enemies who stumble and fall. And I know that there are some translations that understand my foes really being the foes within me, our sins, our the Yetzer Hara within us. That is our foe, and that's what we have to struggle with. And you stand by me, God, even at a time when everything is struggling inside me to help the better angels win. It's a beautiful
Beautiful.
it's a beautiful psalm.
Thank you. So, everything that was said, both by Bob and by Diane, are right on. You know that's really the essence of what this uh, poem, what this psalm is about in terms of its preparation. The fear and trepidation that we feel as we approach this awesome day will be written and sealed in the book of life, and the fact that there are enemies, internal and external, that seek to not permit us to do the kind of tshuva work that we need to do, and we hope that we will be able to approach Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur knowing that we've done the work that needs to be done. So we're going to look at um, this poem that I want us to frame, because I think it's a beautiful poem that kind of helps us enter into this world of preparation and Elul, by Marge Piercy. If you don't know Marge Piercy, she's a magnificent poet. She writes a great deal of poetry that's Jewish poetry about the holidays, about Shabbat. And this one in particular is quite beautiful. So take a minute, read it on your own, and then we'll jump into the psalm. So did everybody finish?
Oh, wow.
Such a powerful poem, isn't it? And what's amazing is that it was written years ago, but it could have been written for today. And given everything that's going on in this world, how did, how are we going to stand before God? How do we stand before ourselves? Um, and ask the question, are we doing the things that we need to be doing in order to make ourselves better and in order to make the world better? Now, of course, I'm talking to a group of people who are on this Zoom class who always ask that question of themselves and are always doing the kind of work that makes a difference in this world. But it's easy for me to say that about you. It may be more difficult for you to say that about yourself, because we are always our most difficult judges. And it's so easy to let ourselves down and recognize the room in which we can grow and the areas of growth specifically that we can engage in. And so, what I want to do is I want to turn to a couple of verses from the Psalms. And I want to start with the one that begins Psalm 1 of David. The Lord is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Whom shall I dread? And in the Hebrew, you know, Ira and Ephad, two words to describe fear, right? That I fear and I am trembling and I'm dreading. And there's this, again, wonderful poem by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are adequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. So, do you agree with what Williamson says? Do you disagree with what she says? And if you agree, why? And if you disagree, why?
So I think I agree with this sentiment. Our fear that we're inadequate is one thing, but to say that we are powerful beyond measure and then not do something is really a letdown. And I think, well, I know I tend to feel guilty at times.
You can see how the first poem that I gave you links in with this poem that I gave you, right? That this poem is presenting in a very stark, simple manner what Marge Piercy is asking of us, which I think, in the way I'm going to read Psalm 27 with you today, or at least a couple verses of Psalm 27, what the psalm is asking of us as well. Sandy, did you have your hand up? Were you going to say something?
No, sorry.
Okay. Paul.
I think of that term, the term "drunk with power," and the fear of being powerful beyond measure is without measure. There's no morality. So power that knows no morality is a tremendous danger. And I think again we see that today very, very well.
Other comments or thoughts about either of these poems as ways of preparing ourselves? Yeah, Judy.
Well, I just, on the first two lines, I think about how it's scary to know how much damage we can do sometimes with just our words. And so we have a lot of power that sometimes we use in wrong ways. So.
And isn't that what Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are about? Measuring ourselves against how we believe we can be our best, how we can use all of the God-given gifts that we have been provided in our life to bring light into a dark world, to ensure that we are making the best of each day, so that on Yom Kippur, when we face our death and the experience of what it would be like to lose our life, the motivation that comes out of that is a deeper engagement in life and a deeper understanding of what it is that we need to do to fulfill the particular mission that we have been given. And how do we use all of those gifts that God has given us to act in this world in godly ways? So, yeah, Diane.
I was going to agree with you that it's not just power corrupts and absolute power, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the loss of morality, I don't think. I think it's more than that. It's when we know what we are capable of doing for the good. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to do it. It takes work to do it. It takes being willing to put yourself out there to do it. You know, I think of people like John Lewis who would stand up and just say the words and cause trouble and make things happen. And sometimes it's easier to do nothing. Sometimes our biggest enemy is inertia. And what great things might we be capable of doing if we stop being afraid of getting off the couch and doing them?
So what stops us? What are we Exactly. Why are we afraid? So let's take a look at verse 2 and 3. Why can't we do the things that we need to do? We're going to look at verse 2 and 3 through the lens of Rabbi Jessica Minin. Then we're going to listen to the beautiful melody of verse 4 that Cantor Jackie is going to lead us in. And then we're going to study verse 4. And that's about all the time that we're going to have. Even though every line of this verse, of this psalm, can be studied intently, we're going to look at two of the lines. So verses 2 and 3, when evil men assail me to devour my flesh, it is they, my foes and my enemies, who stumble and fall. Should an army besiege me, my heart would have no fear. Should war beset me, still would I be confident. So what is the psalmist saying here? What's the psalmist's concern? What's the worry? What is the psalmist asking for from God? Or what is the psalmist feeling in relationship to God?
That's a good one.
Is the poet confident in God or concerned that God is not with him or her?
Oh, he has total faith in God, that God will lead him to safety.
Exactly. So here is a moment, right, where the poet is saying that no matter what is happening to me, no matter the enemies, right, I feel confident that God will not abandon me, that God will be with me in that moment. So Rabbi Jessica Minin, interestingly, looks at this first line, devour my flesh. So obviously the biblical authors were not thinking about zombies when they crafted Psalm 27. Yet they use lechol et bisari, to devour flesh, an example of mimi ira and mimi efcha, those two expressions of fear and dread. It is a dramatic, nightmarish foil to the redemptive focus of the psalm. God is our light and help, our stronghold. Still, every morning I recite this psalm, and for a few desperate and distracted moments, envision every fear, every flaw, and every failure of the past year coming to life as animated corpses, zombies hungry for my flesh. So if you think about the comment that Diane just made a few minutes ago, right? Diane was saying that sometimes we don't do the things that we know that we're capable of doing. And the question is, why don't we do the things that we know that we're capable of doing? Because we're afraid of failure. So one of the things that devours us is our own insecurities. One of the things that doesn't permit us to be the kind of people that we know that we can be is our fear of failure, is the question of who am I to do something? Who am I to get involved? I'm such a small person, I can't do anything. Right? So as I engage, I'm continuing in her essay, as I engage in Cheshbon HaNefesh, the accounting of the soul before the high holidays, these fears and flaws and failures, they eat away at me. It is a common enough expression in English. How often do we describe our guilt, our jealousy, and our anger and say it's eating me up inside? So the language here in our psalm should be understood as equally morbid and just as intentional. Even before, and she's tongue in cheek, but even before Night of the Living Dead painted the metaphor in broad strokes, being called a zombie was a cultural equivalent of being called brainwashed or propagandized, a way of describing those who cannot or will not think for themselves. What could be more true? My enemy daily draws near to consume my flesh. My enemies are conformity, consumerism, the quickness with which I cast aspersions on the character of my fellows simply so that I can feel better about myself. So as we approach the high holidays and we think about the reasons that we are not able to do the things that the psalmist is asking us to do, in the poems that we started with, why can't we achieve the intentionality that we want to be able to achieve? What is it that stops you? What devours you? What are the things that you internalize all the time that don't allow you to move in the way that you want to move? And how can you rely on God? How can you feel the gifts that God has given you, the Tselem Elohim that is inside of you, the light of God that shines in you, in order to be able to overcome those very things that devour you. Right? When we think about preparation for the holidays, maybe, this is a simple question that we can ask us. What devours us? What stops us? What's the internal conversation that we have all the time that doesn't permit us to be the kind of people that God knows that we can be? And that we ultimately know that we can be. Yeah, Ziggy.
Every move we make, it's a conflict between should I do it or shouldn't I do it. So whether you get up in the morning and you go to minyan or not, that's the first decision that you make. Then what are you going to do during the day? Are you going to help other people? Or are you just going to worry about yourself? Every decision we make leads you to a conflict, maybe conflict is too strong a word, but leads you to decide. That's your demon. That's your zombies, and the more of them you can push away, I guess the better person you become.
I heard a lot of people talk about when COVID began and quarantine began, and they knew they were going to be home. They made lists of things that they wanted to get done in the house. And over time, people said, they didn't get the things done on their list. There's a heaviness about being human. In Hebrew, the term is atzilut, like a laziness. And there's a midah, a musar character trait to challenge that kind of heaviness that we find ourselves in. And that's called the midah of zrizut. In fact, those of you that the very first movie that we watched together with Valerie Edwards, The Pursuit of Happiness, we spent a great deal of time talking about the midah of zrizut in that movie because of the inability of the main character to necessarily move in a way that was intentional and allowed him to achieve the goals that he needed to achieve, or that he was able to do that in many ways. So what Ziggy is saying is, where's our zrizut in terms of that which moves us to be fully human, to achieve the things that we need to achieve in this world? Great. Other comments? Yeah, Sandy. This time I see you properly.
That one was intentional. Inactivity begets inactivity. So when we stop, the momentum is difficult. So when we keep going, we tend to keep going. This sounds so trite, but the if you want something done, ask a busy person, I've seen in myself and in others frequently. So, and I think that that's part of it. As soon as we sat down, we started out gangbusters and making reference to the list that you spoke of. But we sat down, and then going back to, having gotten maybe a lot of things done. And then we sat down for a minute and we lost that momentum. But I also think that it was important sometimes. I believe it is important sometimes to allow ourselves just to sit down. And one of the issues with at least one of these things you've read already, you presented this afternoon, is I was thinking about that, this concept of not beating ourselves up on the day that we sit on the couch and either read all day or watch old movies all day or whatever it may be, that sometimes we have to allow ourselves that sometimes that's okay, because I think that's a way of getting our momentum back.
No question about it. Absolutely. Other comments?
I have a comment. Sometimes there are so many things that we feel that we should be doing to repair the world that we don't know which one to start with. And so we don't do anything. It becomes overwhelming. It's like when you have so much work to do at work, and you go, well, what am I supposed to do first? So you just don't want to do anything. That happens to me. There's so many things I see that I want to do, and I just don't know which one to do first, so sometimes I don't do any of them.
Great. Other comments before we move on to verse 2? And by the way, I saw the comments in the chat. I will send, if you want, raise your hand if you want this text, and I will send it to those of you who raise your hand, so you can have it. Okay. And if I don't see you, put yourself in the chat, and I will send it to you as well. So only because I'm looking at the time and I want to go to verse 4, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie, who's going to share with us the music of verse 4, and then we're going to study it a little bit more and then sing it again. Is that correct? Am I accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. Okay. Do you mind stopping to share the screen for one moment? Okay, thank you. And then I'll share it again. I just want to introduce this melody. So this is a melody that for many years and in many publications is designated as a folk melody. And what that often means is that it's of unknown origin. But we know that everything, came from somewhere. But after time, as it's passed down orally, it just becomes a folk tradition. And much of Hasidic music, and this is a Hasidic melody I've discovered, it was passed down orally. There's somebody named Velvel Pasternak. I don't know if you've heard about him. He's a leading publisher of Jewish music. And he had an amazing field project where he traveled to the Borough Park and Crown Heights neighborhoods of Brooklyn and took a tape recorder in his hand and recorded Hasidic melodies that were not notated of a bunch of the different Hasidic dynasties there. And he put them in this book called Songs of the Hasidim 1, and it was so popular that another volume came out, Songs of the Hasidim 2. And so this is just remarkable work that he's able to get this notated, and that's how we have this melody today. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because knowing that this is a Hasidic melody really colors my experience of it and its connection to verse 4. So we're going to study verse 4 with Rabbi Cameras momentarily, but one thing to know about music in the Hasidic movement is that it's integral to the Hasidic movement. Joy expressed through song and dance are very important values of this movement, and in early Hasidism, music could in fact it had the power to affect God in the material world, and then this was restricted to tzaddikim or the rebbes later. But somebody named Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezrich, taught that instead of music being directed to the outside world, we should turn inward, and music should actually affect our inner lives. So it's a way to connect to God, it's a way to connect with ourselves, and it's a way to achieve devekut, which is mystical communion with God. So music's very powerful, and text is not even necessary for music to be powerful. And that's how nigunim came to be. Songs without words came to be through the Hasidic movement, because music had such power to move you inside and your soul and draw you close to God. So this is not a nigun. It has text. It's applied to a text, but it's possible that it was a melody that began as just a nigun without words. And the Hasidic movement, last thing to know before I share this melody with you, is that they are a hallmark of Hasidic music is that they adapt tunes from surrounding non-Jewish cultures. And not only is that not frowned upon, it's actually seen by some leaders as a religious duty. Why is it religious duty? Because, for example, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav says that singing non-Jewish music is a way to attract God's increased attention to Jewish people's sufferings at the hands of non-Jews and to induce redemption. So I share that with you because we don't know if this is a melody that was perhaps taken from the surrounding culture and applied to a Jewish text, but if we ever thought that was a no-no, the Hasidic movement teaches, in fact, no, you can elevate a melody if you apply it in this way. So with that long introduction, here we have, I'm going to share the screen, because I want to share with you the Hebrew and then the English adaptation. And I'll just sing it through once, and then if we have time at the end, we'll learn it together. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם, בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. לחזות בנועם, בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. Try with the English words. One thing I ask of you, I earnestly pray for. One thing I ask of you, I earnestly pray for, that I might dwell in your house all the days of my life, knowing the beauty of you, and to dwell in your holy place, knowing the beauty of you, and to dwell in your holy place. And this is one of those melodies that Velvel Pasternak went to those Brooklyn neighborhoods and captured and put in a book. So there it is.
So hopefully we'll have time to sing that once again all together at the end. While Jackie was leading that beautiful melody, I sent to those of you who had raised your hand the texts. And if you still want it, let me know, put it in the chat, and I'm happy to send it to you, or raise your hand and I will. So, okay. So back to sharing my screen. Okay, so we're going to look at the last text. Whoops. Okay. One thing I ask of the Lord, only that do I seek, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, to frequent his capital temple or lowercase temple. What does the verse mean? Before you read the Malbim commentary and the questions below, what does that verse mean to you? Don't let your eyes stray below the text. Judy, you're
I
muted
have a
there.
really elementary comment, but don't we all live in the house of the Lord all the days of our life? Isn't it the second part that we want?
When you say, don't we all live in the house of the Lord, what do you mean?
I mean, I thought God is with all of us all the time, and that that what we seek is to gaze upon the beauty and the rest of it. I thought the first part was understood.
So I think it is understood by those who understand it. Maving, Yaving, right? But for many of us, we don't understand. For many people, they don't realize that they are living in the house of the Lord. And they don't act Dalifne Miata Omed, as God is before them. So perhaps the second part of the psalm of the verse, to gaze upon the beauty, to frequent God's temple, is the way in which we live in the house of the Lord. To live in the house of the Lord is to notice, is to be mindful, is to pay attention to the beauty, and then to behave as if we are standing all the time in that temple. But is that really the reality of the way many people, and even we sometimes, conduct our lives? So, Judy, you ask an excellent question. An excellent question.
Didn't mean to.
No, you say sometimes it's the simplest, but sometimes the simplest is the most profound. Other thoughts? Yeah, Sandy, and then Lauren.
At the first part of the verse, I thought about that, asking that I don't lose faith, that I so don't fall from the faith that I no longer am able to go Judy's way, as I guess it's that, and to gaze upon the beauty, etc.
Excellent. Right, and it's very easy to lose faith. It's easy to forget that there is so much goodness and so many reasons to believe, both in God's world and in our own world, in ourselves. Right? It's easy to lose faith in ourselves, to be too judgmental, to be too critical. Lauren. You have to unmute, Lauren.
You might. Wait.
Now we can hear you. Nope, now we can't. Nope, now you're muted again.
Okay.
There you go.
Do we live in God's world, or does He live within us? I mean, thinking, isn't God supposed to be within all of us? Don't we find God in everybody and everything?
So I would say to the answer to that question, yes and yes.
Okay. I mean, don't you look for the godlike beauty in people, in their eyes and their soul, and you don't forget it, that people have God within them?
But do we? In other words,
Yeah.
each time you confront another person, do you see godliness of that person? Do you see the image of God in the face of the person who you're yelling at, who you're angry at, who you're judging, who you're ignoring, who, after the fact maybe, but in the moment, maybe not? And then about yourself, when you're judging and you're ignoring yourself, do you see the Tselem Elohim in you when you're being overly critical and judgmental and doing things that are not good for you? So ideally, yes and yes. So what does Malbim say? So Malbim says what I requested in the past is what I still want and will continue to desire in the future, because this one request embodies all of my desires. She'elah, the Hebrew word, there's two words in the verse, in verse 4. Achat sha'alti, one thing I ask, she'elah me'et Adonai oto avakesh, another thing I request. So there's two words that are used to describe those requests. She'elah is an expressed request, whereas bakasha is the unspoken desire of the heart. Some people ask for one thing with their lips while desiring something different in their heart. I ask only that for which my heart yearns. Whoops. So for all of you that I just sent this to, there's a typo. Now there's no longer a typo, but I already sent you the one with the typo. So how does Malbim understand this passage, Achat Sha'alti? What is it that the work is that we want to engage in during the month of Elul, according to the Malbim's reading of this verse? really goes back to the two poems that we started with. What is my purpose? Why am I here? Not what do I think I want or need, but what do I really need? Does my soul need? In order for me to be the kind of person that I need to be, what's the deepest, most existential, most real thing that I am not achieving? What's my lech lecha? When God says to Abraham, go forth via bracha, what's my challenge? What's my purpose? Right? There's lots of things that I want. There's lots of things that I ask for. But what's the core of what it is that I desire? And how do we make those distinctions? How do we move in our life each day, understanding the difference between asking and seeking? How do we discover what it is that our heart really seeks? What do I need to nurture within myself so that I can best journey back to my essence or my inner purpose? And then I threw in a couple of additional questions to keep you busy for the month of Elul. Does this resonate? This reading of the psalm resonate with anybody? Does it help when you're going to be reciting it every day to give you material to consider, to journal about, to think about, to write about over the course of the, month and a half? And if not, that's okay, because there's, a dozen other verses of the psalm that you can pay attention to. Judy? And then Shulamit.
I'm loving what Dr. Dan Gilbert says in his TED Talk, because I think about that all the time, how we're all works in progress, and it makes me more tolerant of myself and of others. As long as people understand that there's always work to do and they're not finished. That's what it's all about, I think.
I think I'm going to revisit all three of these poems again during the month of Elul, and this psalm, because I think the poems, interweave themselves into the psalm, and the psalm goes back to challenge us in the poetry about the kinds of people that we want to be. We stand before, God each year feeling that awesome responsibility that we have of life, knowing that our life hangs in a balance. And how do we ensure that this next year, this next month, this next week, this next day, this next hour, this next minute will be worthy of being alive? And I'm not afraid, because I know that God is with me to guide me in the process of living and of living fully. So we've run out of time. So let's listen to the music one more time and join in with Cantor Jackie as she leads us in this verse.
Words one more time. Try to join me if you can. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אבקש. We repeat that. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. And then we go up. שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו, לחזור בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו. The English. One thing I ask of you, I earnestly pray for, or we might say seek. One thing I ask of you, I earnestly pray for, that I might dwell in your house all the days of my life, knowing the beauty of you, and to dwell in your holy place, knowing the beauty of you, and to dwell in your holy place.
Thank you. I realized that I had mentioned that I was going to ask Shulamit to share. She had her hand up and then I forgot. So Rachel, thank you for reminding me. Shulamit, was there something that you wanted to say that I missed out? You're muted, Shulamit.
I would like to mention that the verse before verse 4 is about trust in God, and the verse after verse 4 is about being secured by God under his wing, in a place where he can hide me in case of danger. And so our verse, אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, is connected to the one before and the one after. And in this verse, the question is to be secure in God's place. So the idea is to go to the basic need of every human being to feel secure in such a way that we will be able to find out what we need to do in this world.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay, well, hopefully food for thought for the month of Elul, material to carry you and present you with things. And even during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, if at some moment you feel a little lost in the service, a little tired of listening to my sermon, you can always turn to this psalm, the poetry around it, and hopefully get inspired. So we will see you soon. Hopefully you will join us for the additional classes that are taking place in August and September, and all of the adult ed that's going to be happening next year. And if you have any comments or questions, let us know. If you have any complaints, send them to the cantor.
Rabbi.
What?
I said the rabbi at the same time as you.
And to all of you who are watching on live stream, it's good to have you with us. And we're going to conclude our class. So may the new year bring you the deepest sense of well-being and satisfaction, and may you be challenged to become your best self and change the world